I'm Claire. My mom had me when she was just 20, barely out of her teenage years. She married my dad the summer after high school, and I came along less than a year later. Growing up, people always mistook us for sisters. It made Mom light up every time, her face beaming with pride as she tossed her perfectly styled hair. I admired her so much as a kid. I'd watch her get ready every morning, fascinated by the precision of her beauty routine. No matter how tight money was, she never skipped her regimen. My dad sometimes grumbled about the cost of her products, but Mom would just laugh and say, "You married a beautiful woman, didn't you?" Beauty doesn't maintain itself. It all seemed normal until I turned 10. That's when the fighting started, or maybe it's just when I started noticing it. Most nights, their arguments bled through our thin apartment walls, muffled but unmistakably sharp. The shouting matches went on for months until one day, my dad simply didn't come home. I still remember the conversation that night. Mom and I were sitting on our beige couch, the one she tried to dress up with a floral throw pillow to hide an old wine stain. She took a deep breath and looked at me, her eyes glassy but resolute. "Claire," she said, her voice steady but detached. "Your dad and I are getting a divorce." "Why?" I asked, my chest tightening. I felt too young to even grasp what was happening, let alone what it meant for us. "Sometimes," she said after a pause, "grown-ups just can't live together anymore." Her words were calm, but her eyes already seemed far away, like she was calculating her next move. "You'll stay with me. Everything's going to be fine. You'll see." But it wasn't fine. That was when the parade of uncles began. Mom would drop me off at Aunt Rose's house more and more frequently, always with the same line. "Mommy needs some adult time, sweetheart. You understand, don't you?" I didn't, but I nodded anyway. Aunt Rose did her best to make those visits enjoyable. She baked cookies with me, let me stay up a little later than usual, and even tried teaching me to knit once. But no amount of warm chocolate chip cookies could distract me from what was really happening. I wasn't stupid. I knew Mom was out meeting men. She sometimes referred to it as finding my new daddy after a glass or two of wine, her tone playful, but with an edge of desperation. One of those nights, I heard her slurring, "Don't worry, Claire. I'm gonna find someone who'll take care of us. You'll see." It wasn't a surprise that her first serious boyfriend didn't last long. 3 months, to be exact. I remember overhearing the breakup. I was lying in bed, the hum of the fan in my room barely covering their argument. "You lied to me, Sandra," he shouted. "A kid? Really?" "I was going to tell you," Mom pleaded. "I just needed to find the right time." "The right time was 3 months ago," he snapped back before the front door slammed shut. That night, Mom came into my room. Her makeup was smudged, and she smelled faintly of perfume and wine. She wrapped her arms around me so tightly it felt like she was holding herself together through sheer willpower. "It's just you and me against the world, baby," she whispered. But even then, at 10 years old, I knew that wasn't true. It wasn't us against the world. It was Mom against the fear of being alone, against the reality that her life wasn't the fairy tale she had imagined. The revolving door of boyfriends continued for years. Some stayed for a few weeks, others barely a weekend. None of them seemed to know about me until it was too late for Mom to hide it. And then they'd leave, one after the other, leaving her teary-eyed and me feeling like an afterthought. By the time I turned 16, Mom met someone who didn't run at the first mention of a daughter. His name was Rob, and he was different. He had a kind smile, a steady voice, and the patience of a saint, something I noticed the first time we all went out for dinner together. Mom looked nervous, twirling her napkin in her hands as we waited for our food. "Rob, there's something I need to tell you," she said. Her voice wavered, and for a second, I thought she might not go through with it. "I have a daughter. Claire is 16. I braced myself, expecting the awkward excuses, the subtle shift in his expression, the eventual goodbye. But Rob just smiled and extended his hand across the table. "I've been wondering when I'd get to meet you," he said warmly. "Your mom's always showing off pictures of the two of you. It's nice to finally put a face to the name." For the first time, I saw a man stay. Rob didn't try too hard to win me over or act like we were instant family. Instead, he included me in little ways. "Hey, Claire," he'd ask, "want to help me tune up the Mustang in the garage?" Or, "What do you think about these paint colors for the living room?" 6 months later, Rob proposed. The wedding was small, just a few close friends and family, but it felt right. By then, I had started to hope that maybe, just maybe, things would settle down. For a while, they did. Not long after Mom and Rob got married, they surprised me with some big news. "We're having a baby," Mom announced over dinner, her face glowing with excitement. Rob looked just as thrilled, holding her hand like he was ready to take on the world. Emma was born a few months after my 17th birthday, and then Lucy followed a year later, right on schedule. Suddenly, our house was filled with the chaos of toddlers, crying, laughter, and toys scattered everywhere. Rob was a fantastic dad, the kind who changed diapers without being asked and stayed up late rocking a fussy baby back to sleep. By the time I graduated high school, Emma was 2, Lucy had just turned 1, and Rob was fully immersed in parenting. My dad, true to his word, helped me pay for college. "You've earned this, kiddo," he told me as we flipped through university brochures. "Pick wherever you want to go." I ended up at State University, just 3 hours away. It wasn't too far, but far enough to feel like I had some freedom. My first year was a whirlwind of lectures, dorm life, and figuring out how to be on my own. But no matter how busy I got, I made it a point to come home on weekends, at least at first. That's when things started to shift. Every time I came home, Mom and Rob had plans. "Claire, honey," Mom would say, already halfway out the door, "you don't mind watching the girls, right? Rob and I haven't had a date night in ages." "But I was hoping to catch up with Ashley and Kim," I'd protest. "We were going to see a movie." "Oh, you can do that next time," she'd reply breezily, handing me a diaper bag. "The girls have been so excited to see their big sister. You wouldn't want to disappoint them, would you?" And just like that, my weekends turned into babysitting marathons. Changing diapers, making bottles, refereeing tantrums. It was nonstop. Emma was in the middle of her terrible 2s, and Lucy, just learning to walk, needed constant supervision to keep from bumping into things. I love my sisters. I really do. But juggling a full course load during the week and wrangling 2 toddlers on the weekend was exhausting. By the time I got back to campus, I was more worn out than when I left. After months of this routine, I finally hit my breaking point. One Sunday evening, after tucking Emma and Lucy into bed, I sat Mom and Rob down in the living room. "I need to talk to you both," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't keep being the default babysitter every weekend." Mom's face hardened instantly. "They're your sisters, Claire. Don't you want to spend time with them?" "Of course I do," I replied. "But I'm also a college student. I need time to rest, see my friends, do normal things for someone my age." Rob nodded, looking thoughtful. "She has a point, Sandra. Claire's still young. Maybe we could hire a babysitter for date nights. I know a couple of reliable people through work." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it didn't last long. "A stranger watching our kids?" Mom snapped, pulling her arm away from Rob. "Claire, I can't believe you're doing this. You're being selfish, just like your father." Her words stung, but I stood my ground. That was the last weekend I spent at home during college. I still called regularly to check on Emma and Lucy, but the 3-hour drive stopped. Mom's guilt-tripping texts became a constant. "Your sisters keep asking where you are," one read. "I guess family doesn't mean much to you anymore." After graduation, I moved back to my hometown. I got a junior management job that didn't pay much but was enough for a small 1-bedroom apartment. I thought the distance and independence would help improve things with Mom. For a little while, it did. Then she called one evening out of the blue. "Claire, Rob and I are getting divorced," she said, her voice flat. "What? Why?" I asked, stunned. "No explanation? It's just over." She sounded resigned, almost bored. She went on to say the girls, now 5 and 4, would stay with her, and Rob had agreed to generous alimony. I should have seen what was coming next. The requests started small. "Claire, can you watch the girls Saturday? I have a doctor's appointment." That appointment, of course, turned out to be a date. Then it was, "Can you take them next weekend? I need to run some errands." Before I knew it, my weekends were swallowed up again. The déjà vu was exhausting. I'd spend 60 hours a week working and give up my rare free days to babysit Emma and Lucy. Not that I could say no, not when Emma would look up at me with her big brown eyes and ask if we could bake cookies, or when Lucy would curl into my lap with her favorite storybook. They were innocent in all this, just like I had been. Then came the night that changed everything. I'd stopped by Mom's house unannounced, carrying groceries, bags full of fruit and snacks for the girls. As soon as I walked in, Emma and Lucy ran to the bags like they hadn't eaten in days. Something felt off. I headed to the kitchen and opened the fridge. My stomach sank. A half-empty bottle of milk, some condiments, and that was it. The cabinets weren't any better. "Mom!" I shouted, storming into her bedroom. She was standing in front of the mirror, trying on a new dress. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Why is there no food in the house? What are the girls eating?" She turned, looking more annoyed than apologetic. "Don't be so dramatic, Claire. I had to spend some time on myself. The alimony only goes so far, and if I want to find a good man, I need to look good." "You spent their food money on clothes and surgery?" I felt something snap inside me. "It's an investment in our future," she said, unfazed. "Once I find a wealthy husband, the girls will have everything they need." I was shaking with anger. "I'm calling Rob," I said, pulling out my phone. Her face crumpled in panic. "Please, Claire. I promise it won't happen again. I'll go grocery shopping tomorrow. Just don't tell Rob, please." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the call button. "This is your last chance, Mom," I warned. "If I ever find out you're neglecting them again, I'm telling Rob everything. No more lies." Just over a month after the empty fridge incident, Mom showed up at my apartment. She looked pale, her usual makeup and perfectly styled hair conspicuously absent. "Claire," she began weakly, "I need your help." "What's wrong?" I asked, concern rising in my chest. "The doctors found something," she said vaguely, pressing a hand to her stomach. "I have to go to the hospital for emergency surgery. Can you watch the girls for a few days?" My mind raced. "What about a professional babysitter? I can help pay for one." "No strangers," she snapped, then softened her tone. "I don't trust anyone else with my babies." "What about Rob? He's their father," I countered. "He's not answering his phone, and Aunt Rose is out of town," she said quickly, as if rehearsed. "Please, Claire, I have no one else." I looked down at Emma and Lucy standing quietly with their little backpacks, clutching their favorite stuffed animals. What choice did I have? "Let me call my boss," I sighed, already reaching for my phone. The next 2 days were a blur of exhaustion. The girls seemed more unruly than usual, likely sensing the stress in the air. Emma threw tantrums over everything: the wrong cup, Lucy touching her toys, sandwiches not cut the right way. Lucy naturally mirrored her sister, and soon I had 2 screaming kids on my hands. By the second day, I was running on fumes. After lunch, I finally got them down for a nap and collapsed onto the couch. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was my friend Kelly. "Hey, Claire," she said casually. "Some party your mom's throwing. Loud music, tons of cars outside. Looks like a big deal. Is it someone's birthday?" "That's impossible," I said, confused. "Mom's in the hospital having surgery. The girls are here with me." "Claire, I'm literally standing at my window looking at her front door," Kelly said. "There's definitely a party happening." My hands started shaking. "You must be mistaken. She's supposed to be in the hospital." "Check for yourself," Kelly suggested. After hanging up, I pulled up Mom's best friend Janet's social media page. Sure enough, there it was. A live stream titled, "Celebrating Sandy's Engagement." My stomach dropped as the video showed Mom's house decorated with twinkling lights, packed with guests holding champagne flutes. The camera panned, and there was Mom, glowing in a red dress, laughing and dancing like she didn't have a care in the world. I called her immediately, straight to voicemail, 5 times. The realization hit me like a freight train. She had lied. I was done being played. I called Aunt Rose first. "Mom said you were out of town. Can you come watch the girls? I need to deal with something." "I'm not out of town," Aunt Rose said, her voice tight with anger. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Your mother has gone too far." Next, I called Rob. He picked up on the first ring. "Claire? Is everything okay?" "No, it's not," I said, my voice shaking. "Mom told me she needed emergency surgery and dumped the girls on me. She's actually throwing an engagement party at her house right now." Rob's voice turned icy. "I'm on my way. Be ready when I get there." 10 minutes later, Rob's car pulled up. The drive to Mom's house was tense, the air between us thick with unspoken frustration. When we arrived, the party was in full swing. Cars lined the street, and music poured out of the house. We walked in without knocking. Mom was in the middle of the living room, wrapped in the arms of a much younger man. Guests were toasting with champagne, cheering, "To Sandra and Mark!" When she saw us, Mom froze. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "Claire? Rob, what are you doing here?" "Funny," I said loudly, silencing the room. "I was about to ask you the same thing. Shouldn't you be in the hospital having emergency surgery?" The man beside her, Mark, looked confused. "Sandy, what's going on?" "Oh, you haven't met me yet," I said, stepping forward. "I'm Claire, her daughter, and those are your future stepdaughters, Emma, age 5, and Lucy, age 4. Surprise!" Mark's face went pale. He turned to Mom. "You have 2 kids? You told me you didn't want children." "They're hardly ever around," Mom stammered, reaching for him. "Their father takes them most of the time." "That's a lie," Rob cut in, his voice cold. "Claire's been watching them every weekend while Sandra's out living her best life." The tension in the room was unbearable. Mark looked at Mom like she'd grown another head. "This is insane. The wedding's off." Within minutes, the house cleared out. Mom was left standing in the wreckage of her perfect evening, mascara streaking down her face. "You've ruined everything!" she screamed at me. "My one chance at happiness." "Happiness," Rob snapped. "What about Emma and Lucy's happiness? The girls you've been neglecting?" "Tomorrow, I'm calling my lawyer. I'm filing for full custody." Mom's face contorted. "You can't." "I can, and I will," Rob said firmly. "They deserve better than this." The ride back to my apartment was quiet. When we arrived, Emma and Lucy ran to Rob, hugging his legs. "Daddy, are we having a sleepover at your house?" Emma asked. Rob knelt down, his eyes softening. "More than a sleepover, sweethearts. You're going to live with Daddy now." The girls cheered, and my heart broke a little. They didn't even ask about Mom. The fallout was immediate. Mom blasted me on social media, painting me as a jealous, toxic daughter who destroyed her life. Underneath each post, I left simple, factual comments. "You lied about surgery to throw an engagement party." "You spent your kids' grocery money on plastic surgery." "You left Emma and Lucy with me every weekend while you went out dating." To my surprise, most of the family sided with me. Aunt Rose was the first to call her out publicly. "Sandra, we've watched you neglect your children for years." Claire did what was right to protect her sisters. The court hearings came soon after. Watching Mom try to maintain her polished image in front of the judge was surreal. Rob's lawyer tore through her financial records, laying everything bare. Thousands spent on cosmetic procedures, designer clothes, and personal trainers. In stark contrast, the amounts spent on her daughters were appallingly low. The judge didn't hesitate. Rob was granted full custody, and Mom lost her parental rights. That was 6 months ago. Mom doesn't speak to me anymore. She occasionally posts about how I betrayed her, but I've stopped reading. She moved in with her best friend Janet, while Rob kept the house. The girls are thriving now. They're in therapy, but they're happy. Rob makes sure they never go without stocked fridges, art supplies, dance classes, soccer games. I visit for dinner twice a week, and those evenings are filled with laughter and warmth, not guilt or manipulation. Last night, Emma showed me her science project, and Lucy practiced her reading with me. No pressure, no drama, just family. Sometimes I wonder if Mom will ever realize what she gave up chasing youth and romance, but that's not my problem anymore. My job is to be the sister Emma and Lucy deserve and to help them grow into strong women who know their worth. As for me, I'm finally living my own life. I got a promotion at work, I'm dating someone who makes me laugh, and every time I see my sisters' faces light up when I walk through the door, I know I made the right choice. Story 2. I frequently reflect on how my life would have turned out if my parents hadn't separated when I was 7 years old. I was just Jessica Thompson at the time, a typical child living with my parents in a comfortable home they had jointly purchased. Family meals, weekend excursions to the park, and bedtime tales read by both parents were all basic pleasures during those formative years, as I recall. When they parted ways, everything was different. Dad made sure we were financially supported and left us the house when he moved away. Mom appeared to be quite pleased that he paid enough alimony to relieve her of the need to work. Mom met Steve a year later. At first, he tried to make me laugh and always brought candy when he came to visit, so he seemed pleasant enough. They were married shortly after the birth of my half-sister Cindy. Things began to alter at that point. Steve started staring at me as if I were in the way. When Mom wasn't around, he would say tiny things. For example, "Do you not miss your father? Or do you not want to live with him?" When I heard the talk that would alter my life, I was 12 years old. "Look," Steve said in a stern yet hushed voice. At work, I was promoted. My pay almost doubled. "There won't be any job for you, or child support for Jessica, although that money helps," Mom answered. "It's really profitable. Sarah, hurry up. Jessica would do better with her father, as we both know. Furthermore, wouldn't it be pleasant to concentrate just on Cindy and our family? How did she not hesitate earlier?" One thing I will always remember is agreeing. "You're correct. Tomorrow, I'll give Mark a call to discuss taking Jessica." In order to avoid making a sound, I kept my palm over my mouth while I stood there in the dark. As I pondered what I had just heard, I forgot about the glass of water I had requested. My own mother no longer needed my father's money, therefore she was trading me away. In retrospect, I question whether they were aware that I overheard the exchange. When Mom announced that I would be moving in with Dad, she pretended that she was doing me a favor. As if she wasn't simply getting rid of me because I'd become financially inconvenient, she continued, "You'll have more opportunities there." Dad embraced me wholeheartedly. No inquiries were made. He had painted my favorite color, stocked the bookcase with all the series, and prepared a room in his apartment for me. That first night at his apartment, I really enjoyed reading. "I'm sorry things turned out this way, youngster, but I want you to know something," he added as he perched on the side of my bed. "With me, you will always have a home. Always." In the years that followed, those words served as my compass while my mother occupied herself with her new family and hardly spoke to me outside of the required holiday calls. Dad was always there. Parent-teacher conferences and school productions. He helped me get into a reputable private school, supported my hobbies, and never made me feel like a burden, even when my first crush broke my heart. He sat with me night after night while I researched colleges and reviewed writings for college applications. I can still clearly recall the day I received my Princeton acceptance letter. Dad was reading it with tears in his eyes. "You succeeded, child." Pulling me into a bare embrace, he murmured, "I've always known you would." Dad never grumbled about the high cost of college. "My top focus is your education." Every time I mentioned the price, he would say, "The 4 years passed quickly, and before I knew it, I was earning an honors degree and working for one of the city's leading consulting businesses." I rented a lovely flat in the heart of the city, close to my dad's house. As we had done since I was 12, we sat down to supper every Sunday. When he inquired about my job, I would update him on my most recent endeavors. We would occasionally just watch old films in cozy silence, exactly as we used to do when I was in high school. Up until it wasn't, everything was ideal. The diagnosis was unexpected: pancreatic cancer in stage 4. 6 months, the physician stated. They had hope. Dad only compensated. I lost him when I was 28. The past several weeks have been cruel. To be with him in the hospital, I took time off from work. He stated, "You were the best thing in my life," as he clutched my hand one night towards the end. Jessica, remember that always. I found out he had left me everything after he died. He had $700,000 in his accounts and a lovely flat in the heart of the city. I couldn't even think about the money. I simply missed my dad. A month following the burial, my phone rang. When I saw my mother on the caller ID, I nearly lost it. "Jessica." She spoke hesitantly. "I've heard about your dad. I'm so sorry." It had been years since I last heard from her. "Regards," I was able to say. I realized that this may not be the ideal moment, but Steve died not long ago. Heart attack. She hesitated. "You've been on my mind a lot." Perhaps I was susceptible because I was grieving, or perhaps I simply wanted to think that people could change. However, I ended up agreeing to get coffee with her. A single cup of coffee led to many trips. Cindy was a newborn when I first got to see her in person. She was now 21 and appeared to be aimless, flitting between job interviews. In contrast to her time when she didn't have to work, Mom was now employed as a cashier at the neighborhood grocery. I began going to see them many times a month. I informed them about my travels, including my European holidays and weekend getaways to several locations. I always gave them presents that they couldn't purchase on their own, like excellent fragrances for Mom, brand clothes for Cindy, and small indulgences. In a way, it felt nice. Being able to tell them about my accomplishments, it turned into a pattern. Even if I was only stopping over for a short cup of coffee, I couldn't arrive at Mom's home without anything. If I didn't bring anything, I'd feel bad. I started going to the local mall before every visit. The clothing I brought back from Europe were extremely well received by Cindy. Every time I took anything from my suitcase, her eyes would light up. "Jess, oh my God, is this from the Parisian boutique?" She would shriek and show off whatever high-end item I had brought her. I first liked their responses. Perhaps I was attempting to purchase the love I was never given as a child. I would carefully select items that I believed they would enjoy. Mom a cashmere jumper, Cindy a leather purse. Then one day I made the decision to find out what they truly want. Oh, there was no way I could. Mom's gaze shifted to her coffee cup. Perhaps just some brand new Target towels. At first, Cindy was just as apprehensive. Perhaps some cosmetics from the pharmacy. But after that, something changed. The demands began to increase in size and frequency. Mom started emailing me whole shopping lists instead of just asking for towels. "When you're in Milan next month, please read this text, honey. We spotted that Gucci purse online. Could you pick it up? Cindy also needs new winter clothing badly. It would be lovely to have Prada. Oh, and our grocery supply is becoming low." My gut churned as I gazed at my phone. The list continued to grow in length and difficulty. Luxury goods were no longer the only ones. After getting yet another long list, they asked me to pay for their basic needs for one evening. I made the decision that enough was enough. I was determined to have a serious chat, so I headed to their place. "We need to discuss these demands, Mom and Cindy." Sitting at their kitchen table, I said. Mom moved in her chair uneasily. "Sweetheart, what do you mean?" "The lists, the items that are always being asked for. Things are getting out of control." Cindy rolled her eyes and said, "Come on, you can afford it after all. You're loaded." "The point isn't that." "Trying to stabilize my kid," I answered. "I do have money, though." "However, what?" Cindy cut me off. "While your family is struggling, you will just stockpile everything. You can't support your impoverished family, you travel constantly, and you have that nice flat. You're wealthy, you're being self-centered because your dad left her all that money." My face began to heat up. Selfish. The parent who genuinely desired me gave me the money. The one who kept me around when I started to cause trouble. The room fell quiet. Finally getting to my feet, I responded, "It's my money and I'll decide how to spend it." "Very pleasant, Jess." Cindy spit. "A really kind approach to show your family love." I slammed the door behind me as I left. My phone was quiet for the following month. No texts, no calls, and no requests. A part of me was relieved, while another part was saddened. My phone rang after I had been silent for a month. Mom was the one. "Jessica, would you mind coming over, honey? I need to discuss something important with you." I was concerned about something in her voice. I ended up driving to her house that afternoon. in spite of our recent argument. When I got there, Mom was seated at the kitchen table and appeared more reserved than normal. Cindy hovered close by, her expression unusually solemn. "What's happening?" I inquired, sitting down. Mom took my hand and reached across the table. "Jessica, I've been to see a doctor. My knee is the problem. I need surgery immediately, they say. A complete knee replacement." I felt sick to my stomach. "How serious is it?" "Dairy." Her voice wavered as she spoke. "According to the doctor, I might become disabled if I don't have it done right away. I would no longer be able to work." I reflected on my father, how rapidly things had deteriorated following his diagnosis, and how powerless I had felt as I watched him suffer. "The problem is," Mom went on, "Arizona is home to the top specialist for this type of surgery. They have a spot available," but she stopped and looked at Cindy. "Everything. Surgery, hospitalization, recovery. The price will be $70,000. $70,000, I repeated. "I know it's a lot," Mom said quickly, "but Cindy will come with me to help during recovery. The whole treatment and rehabilitation will take about a month." I sat there, memories of Dad's last months flooding back, the hospital corridors, the beeping machines, the helpless feeling of watching someone you love suffer. I couldn't let that happen again. Not if I could prevent it. "I'll help," I heard myself say. "But I can't give you the full amount at once. I can give you half now. $35,000, and the other half when I get the hospital bill." Mom's face clouded. "But I need all of it up front." "The hospital?" "Mom?" I interrupted. "That's all I can do right now. I need to be clever about this." She started to argue, but Cindy put a hand on her shoulder. They shared a gaze I couldn't quite decipher. "Actually," Mom said, her tone altering, "let me make a hospital call. Perhaps I can work out a 2-payment plan." I heard her voice coming from the hallway as she exited the room with her phone. She came back a few minutes later, relieved. She declared, "They said it would be fine. After the procedure, we can pay half now and the other half later." The days that followed were a haze of getting ready. I moved the initial $35,000 to my mother's account. I took them to the airport and assisted them with packing a week later. I was sitting in my home office going over some business materials a few days after Mom and Cindy departed when my phone chimed. I smiled at the name that appeared, my dearest buddy from elementary school, Rachel Martinez. We had been friends since we were 6 years old, but we generally spoke via social media when I moved in with my dad. We've been getting together for coffee lately to catch up on missed time. "Hello, Rach. What is going on, Jess?" Her voice had a peculiar quality. "I have a strange question for you. Were you aware that your sister and mother are in Europe?" I thought it was a joke, so I laughed. "What?" "No, Arizona is where they are. Mom is having surgery on me." "Yes, I also had that thinking." Rachel hesitated, though. "Cindy emailed my sister these pictures, which she just showed me." "They are. They're not in Arizona, that's for sure. Every time a new photo loads, my phone pings with incoming texts. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the stomach." Cindy was snapping pictures outside of Rome's expensive stores, while Mom was standing in front of the Trevi fountain, looking wonderfully healthy. At what appeared to be an upscale property, Mom, Sister Angela, and her daughter Emma were relaxing by a private pool. Every picture has a timestamp, making the date from yesterday obvious. With hesitation, Rachel said, "There's more." "That's what my sister said." Cindy had been boasting about the entire situation. "It seems that your mother purchased one-way tickets for each of them personally. Cindy, your cousin Emma, and your Aunt Angela. For a month, they are renting a luxurious villa, dining at upscale restaurants, and shopping at Aldi's upscale stores." I sat there looking at a picture of my mother, who was reportedly in the hospital after surgery, drinking wine at a restaurant on the roof with a view of the Italian countryside. She was on a trip in Europe with the $35,000 I had given her for medical expenditures. I slept through the night, staring at those pictures repeatedly. How were they able to achieve this? How could they so blatantly use my worries about my mother's health by lying? They had tricked me into handing them money by playing on my recollections of my father's sickness. I contacted my mother the next morning. I could hardly hold the phone because my hands were trembling so much. What was the outcome of the surgery? Trying to speak steadily, I asked. Oh, things went really well. According to the doctor, everything went smoothly. I've already begun my recovery. My knuckles became white as I held onto the edge of my desk. I was sickened by the cavalier manner she lied. I responded, my voice brimming with barely restrained anger. That's fantastic. I would be delighted to discuss the surgery with your physician. Are you able to put him on? There was a brief silence. Oh my, he's so busy at the moment. Besides, you don't have to worry him. Look, I have to leave. I'm getting a call for physical therapy. Before I could reply, the line died. A flood of memories washed over me as I sat there looking at my phone. When I was 12, my mother gave me away since she no longer needed my father's money. Mom finally got in touch with me when my father passed away and gave me his estate. Mom expects me to pay for her lifestyle, so she sends me shopping lists. And now this. The ultimate act of treachery. I chose to comply with their pretense by phoning my mother daily to inquire about her recuperation. Every time she prepared a fresh justification? Honey, the doctor is currently undergoing surgery. Today he is attending a seminar. Other patients are being seen by him. His leave of absence ends tomorrow. When the performer kept forgetting their lines and making up new ones on the scene, it was like watching a lousy play. Partly out of rage, and half because I was amazed at how absurd her explanations were becoming, I began to compile a list of them. During one call, I tried to seem worried and said, Mom, we might be able to video chat. I simply want to check in with you. Make sure the hospital is pleasant for you. On the other end, there was a rustling sound, most likely her covering the phone while she spoke with Cindy about her next move. I look awful right now, darling. All bruised and swollen. In addition, the hospital's Wi-Fi is terrible, continues to cut off. In the background, I could hear a little Italian pop music. Really? I hit that odd button for a prestigious hospital. You are aware of the nature of these things. Quickly, she said. Listen, I have to leave. It's time for my physical therapy session. I phoned again later. I chose to take a different tack. Just give me the hospital bill straight, Mom. The remaining $35,000 will be sent to their account by me. No. She spoke too rapidly to be aggressive before lowering her voice. That's not essential, really. Simply transfer money to my account, and I will take care of any hospital-related matters. Here they now recognize me. I didn't call again after that exchange. Allow them to perspire a bit. Mom's number showed up on my phone a week later, I thought. As I watched it ring, I could picture her becoming increasingly alarmed as she realized that the money would not actually arrive. Then the text arrived. Jessica, the hospital is requesting quick payment. Threats of sending the bill to collections are being made. We really need the money, please. I waited for hours before penning my response, taking my time. No issue. Simply send me the hospital bill, and I'll take care of it right away. Then there was silence. It lasted for 3 days. I was aware that they were frantically attempting to decide what to do next. Then I received an email with the subject, Urgent Hospital Bill attached, in my inbox. I nearly burst out laughing when I opened the attachment. They hadn't even attempted to make it appear authentic. The hazy letterhead was obviously a copy from another source. 6 months have passed since the date. Most revealingly, the payment information section included Mom's personal bank account, and the hospital's address was given as California rather than Arizona. I was both amused and very saddened as I gazed at this pitiful attempt at counterfeit. I took pictures of a pile of $100 notes that I had taken out earlier that week, arranging them as if they were on my desk. Have you received your bill? I replied, sent you the money and sent the pictures. Before pressing the submit button, my finger briefly lingered over it. Come on, Mom, I said. Let's wait and see what narrative you think of next. Less than an hour after I emailed the pictures, my phone rang. I inhaled deeply before responding as Mom's name appeared on the screen. Jessica. She spoke in a panicky, high-pitched voice. What's happening? What happened to the remaining funds? We've been holding out. Mom, stop the act. I interrupted her speech. I made a call. You're not in a hospital, and I know precisely where you are. What are you discussing? You're in a villa in Italy with Cindy, Angela, and Emma, dining at upscale restaurants and shopping at luxury shops. There was a pause in the queue. Her mind was racing, trying to decide how to spend this, and I could practically hear it. "How did you?" she began. The pictures Cindy gave to Rachel's sister were shown to Rachel, who forwarded them to me. "Did you truly believe I wouldn't find out?" I asked. "I've witnessed everything. The shopping excursions, the villa, everything. You scared me out of money for a trip by using my father's passing, my sadness, and my guilt over not being able to rescue him." One more pause. Then she spoke in a different tone. Defensive rage took the place of the phony concern. "All right, we are in Italy, yes. I was aware that you would never pay for our trip. However, why shouldn't we be able to travel there? You're constantly on your way. New York, London, and Paris. Cindy and I, meantime, hardly have enough money for groceries. It's unfair." Unfair. I was trembling as I spoke. Right now, unfair. When you were 12 years old, did your mother sell you because she no longer needed your father's money? Unfair. 16 years later, is it still the same mother? Your father passed away and left you money, not because she misses you. "We can discuss all of that later," she responded hastily. "We are currently facing a significant issue. We still have to pay the bill, but we don't have any money for tickets home. Rent. Everyone must return to their jobs. We cannot be laid off. Jessica, please. That additional $35,000 is necessary." I was finally able to see things properly in that moment. There had been no change. When I became financially inconvenient, she was still the same lady who had abandoned me. She only wanted me back now. She wanted my money back, actually. I stated bluntly, "That's your problem, not mine." "Mom, goodbye." I quickly blocked her phone after hanging up. I then banned them on all social networking sites, messaging apps, and any channels they may use to contact me. Mom, Aunt Angela, Cindy, everyone who was part of the plan. Sitting there in my apartment's quiet, Dad left me the flat. Something changed inside of me. The final hope that my mother could genuinely be interested in me. Instead of wanting her daughter's money, she could really desire a relationship with her. 2 weeks after I banned everyone, he finally passed away. My grandma gave me a call. I nearly didn't respond. However, Mom and Grandma had never been the same. More sincere, more truthful. "Jessica." "Honey," she murmured in an anxious tone. "I got a call from your mom. She stated that she desperately needed $15,000. Although I don't have that much money, I figured you may." "Grandma," I said softly. "Let me explain what actually took place." I told her everything. The phony procedure, the trip to Italy, the con to steal my money. I could hear her becoming larger with every detail. At last, she murmured, "Oh, Jessica, I'm so sorry. It never occurred to me that Sarah would do this." "Grandma, don't worry about them," I reassured her. "They created this situation for themselves. They are able to escape." Fortunately, I didn't have to wait long to learn how they accomplished it. A few days later, Rachel gave me a call. "Have you seen Cindy's social media activity?" she inquired. I had blocked them everywhere, so I hadn't. Rachel then went on to tell me, she is organizing this fundraising on the grounds that her affluent sister left them in Italy with no means of transportation. She is portraying you as a cold-hearted, wealthy individual who abandoned her impoverished family and left them trapped abroad. I experienced a well-known spike in fury, but this time it was accompanied by another emotion, laughter. "How are things going for them?" I inquired. According to Rachel, they attempted to raise the funds for over 2 weeks. All of the expensive clothing and purses they had purchased had to be sold. Because they were unable to pay the rent, and get this, the villa owner apparently threatened to contact the police. They all remained far longer than their allotted vacation time, which almost cost them their jobs. As I shook my head, I reflected on how disastrously their big European excursion had turned out. Grandma gave another call a month later with an update. "They're back at last," she remarked. "It's a mess, though, Jessica. Your mother is no longer in contact with your Aunt Angela. After things broke apart, Sarah apparently insisted that she help pay for the trip, and I was unable to give her the money for her return tickets, which led to a horrific argument between us. In fact, she said that I had chosen you above her. Grandma, I'm sorry you were drawn into this. don't be. Sometimes, dear, individuals have to deal with the fallout from their choices. After we hung up, I went to my dad's flat and stared out over the city from the window. The sky was tinted in tones of pink and orange as the sun descended. A pile of trip pamphlets waited on my desk. I was organizing my next vacation, which would take me to Greece. It's possible that the previous version of myself felt bad about going when Mom and Cindy were struggling. Perhaps I asked them along when I was younger. I made another attempt to establish the kind of relationship I had always desired with them. However, that me was no longer there, replaced by a more powerful individual. An individual who at last realized that certain relationships are not worth preserving. I kept thinking about Dad's final remarks to me when I was in the hospital. Jessica, you were the greatest thing in my life. Remember that always. I realized at last that I had been fortunate, and I hadn't forgotten. I am fortunate to have had a single mom who taught me the value of myself, placed me first, and genuinely loved me. Mom and Cindy were free to continue their plots and deceit. I inherited my father's legacy, his affection, and, above all, my dignity. I live a tranquil life these days. I work hard at my career, travel whenever I want, and hang out with people that appreciate me for who I am, rather than what I can provide them. Grandma occasionally gives me tidbits of information concerning Mom and Cindy. They continue to struggle, act like victims, and search for their next victim. However, their drama no longer affects me. Story 3. I discovered early on that my sister Lisa was unique, or exceptional, as my parents would say, as I was growing up in our small 2-story home. Everything in our home was centered on her fragile health from the day she was born, when I was 6 years old. "Sarah, now shut that window." From downstairs, Mom would yell, "Your sister may become ill." This served as the background music throughout my early years, a continual reminder that everyone's first priority was Lisa's welfare. I recall when I first realized how different our positions would be. Lisa had just begun primary school, and I was 12. One day she had a runny nose when she got home. You'd assume she had pneumonia, but it's nothing serious, based on my parents' responses. "Sarah, you are to blame for this." I felt Dad's words pierce me like a knife. "When you arrived at school this morning, you must have left the door open for too long." I intended to make the case that Lisa most likely got it from a classmate, just like every other child. However, I knew better than to raise my voice. Rather, I simply agreed and took my weekend grounding as punishment. Mom began assigning home duties to the other children my age that same year, while they were playing after school. I was taught the correct way to hoover floors, clean furniture, and even wash laundry. But why doesn't Lisa have to assist, Mom? One day, while I folded what seemed like piles of clothing and watched my sister stretched on the couch watching TV, I inquired. Mom's answer was incisive and prompt. "Sarah, your sister's immune system is poor. She shouldn't exert herself too much," the physicians advise. "Furthermore, you're already quite skilled at these things." That became our life's rhythm. I took care of everything needed to be done. I was to blame if something went wrong. Dad grounded me for a week when Lisa struggled in 4th grade maths because I should have helped her study more after she shattered her mother's favorite coffee mug. It was, however, since I ought to have been keeping a closer eye on her. One especially annoying instance occurred when I was 16 and Lisa was 10. Without asking, she had stolen my favorite jumper and covered it with juice. Mom simply sighed and told me, "Sarah, you should have put it somewhere she couldn't reach it." After I protested, "You are aware of her recklessness." I began to fantasize about education and escape at that point. With the knowledge that education was my key to freedom, I immersed myself into my studies. I always directed my energies into my education when I was feeling overpowered by the injustice at home. I had great grades, and my professors saw how committed I was. However, at home, even my academic achievements were misrepresented to emphasize Lisa's difficulties. "Can you see how simple it is for Sarah? You just need to try harder, sweetie," Mom would tell Lisa. But since there were always reasons why Lisa couldn't achieve, she never had to put in more effort. And I was always available to help her out. Everything changed the day I graduated from high school. I had already come to terms with the fact that I would not be attending college. I assumed that any savings would be used for Lisa's schooling, because we weren't really making a lot of money. I had been perusing job postings with the intention of working at the neighborhood restaurant and attending some programs at the community college. Following the conclusion of all the graduation ceremonies that evening, I was called into the living room by my parents. As usual, Lisa was playing on her phone while spread out on the couch. Dad's voice was particularly serious as he ordered, "Sarah, sit down. We must discuss your future." I felt my gut tighten. It's coming. The lesson made me think about taking responsibilities, supporting my family, and delaying my aspirations. Mom took out an envelope from within her purse. She slipped it over the sofa table and added, "We've been saving since you were a little child." I opened it with shaky hands. A bank statement with an account in my name was inside. Have the funds to attend state college for 4 years. However, I stumbled as I glanced between them and the document I was holding. With a quick glance at Lisa, who was acting as though she wasn't listening, Mom said, "We can see how well you're doing." "What about Lisa?" "Well, she may not be able to attend college. We felt that you would be a better use for this money." I couldn't speak. In my life, for the first time, Lisa wasn't receiving what I was. It was odd, nearly incorrect, after a long period of time. Dad added, however, in a harsher tone, "You have to make us a pledge." His elbows rested on his knees as he leaned forward. "You'll support the family once you graduate from college and land a solid career. Keep your sister in mind." "Of course," I blurted out, still in disbelief at this sudden development. "I swear." Lisa slammed her door upstairs as she abruptly jumped up and raced out of the room. Mom let out a sigh, but she didn't follow. Quite the opposite of how they often catered to her every emotion. I packed my things and went to state college that autumn, 3 states distant. It was liberating to be so far away. In my life, for the first time, I didn't have to be concerned about anyone becoming sick. I could watch Lisa or assist with housework without being distracted from my studies. I couldn't turn down an offer I received 2 months before to graduation, a job at one of the city's most prominent companies, Anderson & Global. The chance was too wonderful to refuse, and the pay was outstanding. I acquired a good flat close to the office and got used to my new life after telling my parents that they were surprisingly accepting about me not going home. I called my family every weekend and maintained constant communication with them. We frequently talked about Lisa and how she was still figuring herself out after high school, not in college or the workforce, but surviving. However, I wasn't in charge of resolving that circumstance for the first time in my life. My mother contacted me 3 years after I started working at Anderson & Global, and her voice had that tone she always used when she needed things. I was looking over the quarterly reports. She started speaking in a honey-sweet voice as soon as my phone displayed her name, Sarah Honey. "Lisa has been struggling to find a job, you know." I knew where this was headed, so I closed my eyes. "Your business is doing so well," she added. "Couldn't you say anything nice about your sister? Get her a job there, perhaps? You are aware of how intelligent she is." I felt my gut turn to knots. What could I say about that? At a company like Anderson & Global, Lisa, who had never worked and had never attended college, would not pass the initial application round. "We do have some openings," I added thoughtfully. "I'll forward the application so Lisa may review the requirements." I sent Lisa's email the normal application form that evening. The specifications were quite clear. Proficiency with Oracle and SAP systems is essential for a bachelor's degree. Besides English, fluent in 2 foreign languages. 5 years or more of relevant experience is required. Favorite. Mom ceased pursuing Lisa's employment at my firm after that. Life continued. I put forth a lot of effort, received 2 promotions, and began to accumulate a respectable savings account. The idea of purchasing my own property started to take form. Rent is no longer due, a location I can really call home. I made the decision to go home for the first time in months, 2 years later. The paint was chipping in several areas, and the home was smaller than I had recalled. Like when we were adolescents, Lisa was still there, splayed out on the same couch, browsing through her phone. I told them about my ideas over supper. I remarked, moving my slice around the plate, I've been saving up. I'm considering purchasing an apartment. Right now, the market is doing well. I may also obtain a respectable mortgage rate given my credit score. There was silence at the table. As Lisa was suddenly extremely interested in her mashed potatoes, Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Mom phoned after a week. This time she spoke in a frightened, even frantic tone. "Sarah, we must speak, my dear," she started. "Your dad isn't feeling well. He is no longer able to perform those extra shifts at work since his back is acting up again." She detailed their problems, and I listened. The walls required painting, the plumbing was old, and the roof was leaking. There was a price tag connected to each problem. Her voice cracked as she continued. "We're barely making ends meet. And, honey, after everything we did for you, you have a chance at a bright life thanks to the college funds. The moment has come for you to assist your family. Sarah, you are necessary to us." It was there. The reminder that I owe them money. The duty I vowed to carry out all those years ago. After that phone call, every word my mother said seemed to erode the goal of having my own flat. I thought about my parents' predicament for a number of restless evenings. My own guilt. While they were unable to even mend their leaky roof, I was making plans to purchase a flat. At last, I made the choice that would alter everything. On a Sunday morning, I gave my mother a call. "What you mentioned has been on my mind." I began to attempt to speak steadily. "I'd want to assist. I will allow you to access my account. Up to $1,500 can be spent each month. That need to pay for the repairs and assist with the expenses." The other end was silent for a very long time. I believed that we were no longer connected. Then Mom's voice returned, full of passion. Sarah, that's really kind. It's a huge quantity. Most likely we won't even require that much, just enough for a few groceries and minor repairs." I guided her through configuring her phone's access. "Just keep the limit in mind," I reminded her. $1,500 a month. "Naturally," she assured me, "of course. We'll handle it with extreme caution." The initial months were uneventful. I hardly looked at the account activity since I was so busy at work. However, I noticed little withdrawals when I looked at it. Here, $700. There, $800. Mostly food stores, hardware stores, and utility bills. They appeared to be handling the money sensibly, as their mother had instructed. Then, however, things began to shift. Slowly, the sums started to increase. 100, 900, 1 month. The subsequent one, I made an effort to ignore it. After all, house repairs may be costly, and they were still below the limit. The notification that made all the difference then arrived. My phone buzzed while I was in a meeting because I had put up an alert for a $2,000 charge at Luxe Boutique for large purchases. I almost dropped my phone. That isn't possible. Immediately after the meeting, I retrieved my account information. In black and white, a $2,000 purchase was made at one of the priciest apparel boutiques in the neighborhood. Incredulous, I gazed at the screen. With my flat savings target, I had never even gone shopping there. I was unable to defend spending that much money on clothing. I was trembling as I dialed my mother's phone. "Mom, I just received word that I bought something at Luxe Boutique for $2,000. Trying to speak with a level voice, I said, "What's happening?" An uneasy laugh followed a silence. "Oh, that. You know, next month is my birthday." Her voice was abnormally bright as she spoke. I thought, well, I've been feeling so down lately with all our troubles. When I saw this stunning dress, all I wanted to do was indulge myself. "All right?" In an attempt to avoid a fight, I said, "Please just stay within the bounds." We decided. "Naturally, honey," she said hastily, before adding, "By the way, I'm still anticipating your birthday present. Surely you haven't forgotten." After the call ended, I sat there and gazed at my screen's account activity. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong, but I knew it wasn't right. There was more to this than a dress. This had to do with something else, something I had not yet noticed. After that, I set up thorough transaction alerts on my phone and began checking my account more frequently. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw it. The trend of spending was increasing at a startling rate. The $1,800 limit had been blown by Mom as if it didn't exist. It was $2,000 for a month, then $2,500. And before I knew it, some months were hitting $4,000. My savings account, which I'd been nurturing for years with dreams of my own home, was shrinking instead of growing. One evening, after seeing yet another large transaction, I pulled up my account on my laptop and created a spreadsheet. The numbers were right there in black and white in just a few months. They'd spent more than I had in an entire year. My own monthly expenses were modest rent, utilities, groceries, and the occasional dinner out with colleagues. I drove a used car, bought my clothes on sale, and packed my lunch. Most days, meanwhile, my parents were supposedly spending thousands on what exactly? I decided it was time for a visit. I needed to see these home improvements for myself. "Mom," I said when I called her, "I'm thinking of coming home next weekend. It'll be nice to celebrate your birthday in person, and I'd love to see that dress you bought. Plus, you can show me all the repairs you've done to the house." There was a long pause on the other end of the line when Mom finally spoke. Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Oh no, honey, don't come," she said quickly. "I'm not really celebrating my birthday this year. I'm not feeling up to it. But Mom, I haven't been home in months and I'd really like to see now." She cut me off forcefully, then instantly softened her tone. "It's just not a good moment, Sarah. But you may send my birthday gift by mail if you'd like." That call rang off every alarm bell in my brain. I spent the entire night poring over 6 months of bank statements line by line. The more I looked, the less sense it made. There were charges from businesses I knew my mother would never patronize at, eateries that stayed open until 2 a.m., bars I'd never heard of. The house repair bills were there, but they were modest compared to everything else. $150 at Home Depot, $200 at a plumbing supply store. These were overshadowed by charges from high-end boutiques, jewelry stores, and electronics shops. Someone had bought a wonder $200 smartphone last month. My mother still used the same flip phone she'd had for years, stating she didn't need anything fancier. Like a picture coming into focus, the pattern began to appear at adolescent pubs, nightclubs, fancy clothes stores, nail salons, and beauty shops. My elderly parents, who were struggling to make ends meet, did not have to pay these bills. It was someone else who had to pay for these. A youthful person, a party animal, someone without a job yet with fancy taste. Lisa. The insight struck me like a punch to the body. Mom had often spoken about the malfunctioning plumbing and leaky roof. Those guilt trips about supporting the family are so common. A smokescreen had been used. My parents, who were allegedly having financial difficulties, weren't utilizing my money to fix their home. My sister's lavish lifestyle was being financed by them. As I browsed through transaction after transaction, I felt nauseous. A day at the spa for $300, $200 bar tabs many times a week, and a $500 shopping spree at a designer outlet. Mom didn't want me to come visit because of this. There was only Lisa, no significant fixes to admire, no upgrades to brag about. While I was pinching pennies and delaying my own ambitions, I was living it up on my dime. The next morning, I practiced my response by pacing my apartment while holding my phone. I finally made the call around lunchtime. When she answered, I responded, "Mom," in a voice that was more steady than I felt. We met to discuss the true purpose of my money. The other end paused for a long moment. "Honey, what do you mean?" "You understand exactly what I mean, I believe." I inhaled deeply. "The new smartphone, the bars, and the high-end clothing. You don't have to pay those, do you? They are leases." I heard her take a deep breath and then exhale. Her voice had altered by the time she spoke again. "No more flattering remarks. Put an end to the pretense." "What did you anticipate then?" Defensively, she said, "We are related. Lisa requires pleasant things as well. If she hasn't discovered her path yet, she can't help it." "You lied to me, Mom. You informed me that the funds were intended for home repairs. A portion of it was utilized for repairs." She cut me off. "But you have so much, Sarah. Lisa too has very little. In addition, you owe us." "Where? Did you forget who covered the cost of your expensive college education?" It nearly made me chuckle. I had anticipated this. The ultimate card of guilt. However, I was ready. "In fact, yesterday night I did the maths, Mom. Each and every cost during the last 2 years. Do you want to know what I discovered?" I retrieved my spreadsheet for the last 24 months. You have used up $72,000 of my funds. That's more than my college tuition was covered by you and Dad, plus interest. In other words, I no longer owe you anything." There was silence in the queue. Then, without saying anything else, almost automatically, Mom hung up. I went to Facebook and entered Lisa's name there. It has been months since I last checked her profile. I had been too preoccupied with my own life and too busy working. My ire increased with every swipe as I now went through post after post. She was posing in the $2,000 outfit that her mother had said was for her birthday, which she had purchased from Luxe Boutique. Last month, Lisa was at a resort, enjoying a luxury cocktail while relaxing by a pool. I recognized a series of pictures of clubs, parties, and eateries from my bank accounts. She was even tagging herself at all the fancy locations she'd been to, sporting the pricey jewelry I'd unwittingly purchased. I needed more details with my money. Marie had always been the family truth teller, so I called her out. The one individual who has never subscribed to the Lisa can do no wrong theory. "I have a question for you, Ed Marie. Have you visited my parents' house recently?" I said. "Have they made any repairs?" She chuckled bitterly. "Fixes. The home is becoming worse, but that's the only difference. Even the broken step on the front porch will not be fixed by your father." "Why are you asking?" I gave an explanation of the money I had been giving for the alleged repairs. Emery became larger with every syllable. At last, she murmured, "Oh, Sarah. Repairs won't be made with that money. Lisa is not employed. No longer even searches for work. Just constant partying." She hesitated. "She is now attempting to entice my Jenny to adopt that way of life as well. Tells her how much fun it is to live freely and easily, while repeatedly asking her to these crazy parties." Her next words made my blood run cold, even though my stomach was already in knots. "You ought to be aware of something else as well," Marie went on, her voice trailing off. "Jenny confided in me about this. However, you must hear it. Lisa has been displaying what seems to be a recommendation letter from you. Claims that she worked as an intern at your business under your direction. Jenny caught sight of it. It contains everything, even your signature. Lisa intends to apply to Carlton Industries using it." The room began to swirl. A fake recommendation letter signed by myself. Lisa's reputation would not be the only thing at stake if she were caught. I would own it. Everything I had worked for, including my enterprises, may be destroyed. After I hung up with Anne-Marie, I phoned the Human Resources Department at Carlton Industries right away. As I described the scenario, my hands were trembling. "I have to report a phony recommendation letter." I mentioned that my sister was using a fake letter in my name to apply for a job. She has never worked for my firm, and I never authored or signed it. That should be the end of it, I thought. I was mistaken. My phone was inundated with calls from my parents 2 days later. My eardrums were almost ruptured by my mother's yelling voice when I eventually responded. "You have no right to ruin your sister's career." She let out a cry. She was going to start working for Carlton Industries. "She faked my signature, Mom." At last, she was making an effort to succeed. Mom went on as like I hadn't said anything. "You also wrecked it. She has always made you jealous." Shuffling was audible to me. Then, more irate than I had ever heard him, Dad's voice came on the line. "Because of you, Lisa has been sobbing nonstop for the past 2 days. He snarled. "Did you wish for that? To harm your sister? Congratulations, then. You're not my daughter. Think of yourself as disowned. She was a scam, Dad." He interrupted me. "If you ever wanted our forgiveness." His tone was calculated and frigid. "You will have to start paying us more. A lot more than previously. We might then think about pardoning you for what you did to your sister at some point." The last straw was what my father said. In that instant, years of unfairness, shame, and deception swept over me, and all of a sudden, everything seemed very plain. I firmly responded, "No," into the phone. "I have nothing left to owe you. You lied to me after I gave you unselfish assistance. Why don't you contact Lisa for assistance if you are in such dire need of money right now? You've been spending all that money on her, after all." With trembling palms, I hung up before they could reply. I launched my banking app and blocked my mother from accessing my account going forward. I felt a new weight settle in my tummy, and a weight lift off my shoulders when I hit the confirm button. I anticipated what would happen. The following morning, the call began. "How could you harm us like this?" My voicemail was interrupted by Mom's shrill voice. "You conceited jerk, after all we've done for you." Then came Lisa's message. "You believe that you are far superior to everyone else? With your ideal existence and your fancy job?" The texts continued to arrive even after I erased them without hearing the conclusion. Every day I get emails, voicemails, and texts full of accusations, guilt trips, and requests to get my money back. They were all more irate and desperate than the previous. They began phoning from other phones when I blocked their numbers. Marie phoned Sarah after I barred those two each week from the bombardment. "Honey," she whispered softly, "I wanted to caution you. Everyone in the family is being called by your parents. They're telling everyone how awful you are as a daughter and how you left them when they needed you most." She hesitated. "I am aware of the reality. Jenny also does. They refuse to listen to our attempts to correct them. I only wanted you to be aware of their actions." 3 months have passed since then. My life has now become more normal. My savings account is expanding once more. The speed at which money accumulates while it isn't being spent by others is astounding. I've taken my flat search seriously and am attending weekend viewings. I even had a meeting with a mortgage advisor last week. I still sometimes get messages from a different number, but the calls have largely ceased. I don't read them before deleting them. Right now, I occasionally question whether my dad's back condition is actually becoming worse. I wonder if Lisa ever attempted to counterfeit someone else's signature, or if she is still enjoying the high life on someone else's pay, if Mom is still covering for Lisa's excesses. However, my primary concentration is on my personal life. I save, I work, I hang out with people that appreciate me for who I am, not for what I can provide them. I'm getting over my shame for prioritizing my own needs. Will my family ever hear from me again? To be honest, I have no idea. Perhaps things will change in the future. Perhaps one day they'll realize their mistake. Where will I find the forgiveness in my heart? Even if they don't. But for now, I'm concentrating on creating the life I desire. One that isn't burdened by obligations, guilt, or the expectations of others.